Hey guys, so inside this box is my very first coloring book, and I'm gonna take you guys start to finish on my process of creating my first coloring book. So if you've ever been interested in self-publishing, publishing your own books, or maybe putting together your own comic to sell at shows, this vlog is gonna give you an inside look at what it takes to get your first book out there. I want to share my journey of creating my brand new coloring book, Curious Little Things, from somewhat start to all the way finish. And I say somewhat start because we didn't really start from scratch. We started using Lilliputian Living, which a lot of people requested that we release it as a coloring book. So we started with this as our base and then kind of fleshed it out from there. So this is kind of assuming you have a bunch of themed illustrations that you would like to sell as, you know, a complete whole. This is not by any means a definitive how-to. This isn't a tutorial on using InDesign. This isn't even a tutorial on working around KDP's weird idiosyncrasies. This is just a vlog about making my first coloring book out of a prose and illustration book that I released last year. So if you're interested in making your own coloring book, I hope today's vlog is helpful, useful, and informative for you guys. And if you like my art and you would like your own copy of Curious Little Things, it is available in the Natto shop, or you can order it on Amazon. And Lilliputian Living started out, well, it originally started out as a series of zines, but we collected them into a perfect bound volume that contains a header, some prose, and then our illustration. And as you guys can see, most of them are black and white line art, but some of them are grayscale illustrations. So in order to turn Lilliputian Living into Curious Little Things, we actually had to do a lot of work. So one of the first things we had to do was we had to kind of curate which illustrations would really lend themselves to coloring book pages the best. People have been telling me for a while that they would actually color in Lilliputian Living, which does not sound like an ideal coloring situation. So one of the first changes we wanted to make was we wanted to offer a larger scale. So this is 8.5 by 11. It's about the same size as volume 1 and volume 2 of 7-inch Cara. We also wanted to offer white paper rather than the cream paper. And we also wanted to curate the selection of illustrations so that we had the illustrations that would really work best as coloring illustrations. As you guys can see, some of these illustrations are really cute, but they have a lot of grayscale, they have a lot of dry brush, and they have a lot of spot black going on. So we had to kind of go through and, first of all, get rid of the whole second chapter. We replaced that instead with year number 5, and I'll show you guys that in a little bit. But we also had to select which of these illustrations would work best as a coloring book. So the first thing we did is we took the Lilliputian Living file and Joseph duplicated it and resized it and rescaled everything for Curious Little Things. We also got rid of the side prose, and we changed some of the additional book decoration. Like, we no longer have these calendar pages because this is no longer a month view. So we added a bunch of illustrations. We made a bunch of the illustrations larger. We switched out some of the illustrations to illustrations that might work better for coloring. And when I had it, I actually switched out some of the illustrations with images that had been re-inked since. So I'm going to talk about this more in depth. But one of the things I really did not like and don't appreciate about KDP is while we tried to accommodate the spine, because that's one of the big things people complain about when it comes to coloring books, is that the image is too far into the spine. So we tried to accommodate that. KDP has weird problems with borders. So like printing to the edges, like this one, it allowed us to do that, and that looks great. And then further on in the book, they didn't allow us to do that. And it doesn't look nearly as good as it would if they had allowed us to do border to border printing. So what are some of the features of Curious Little Things? Well, I did a fair amount of research while working on Curious Little Things about what kind of adult coloring books are doing well on Amazon. What are some of the features that those coloring books have? What price point, how many images, what do the covers look like, what does the body text look like, what are people talking about in the reviews, and I try to address as much of that as possible with Curious Little Thing. One of the major complaints is the paper that KDP uses. A lot of people find that it's good for markers and good for color pencils, but terrible for watercolor. I wholeheartedly agree, and we'll explore that a little bit more in this vlog, but that is why there is a download link, and I don't want to show you guys because I want to encourage you guys to actually buy the book, but that's why there's a download link in this book where you can download high-res scans so that you can print them out on the paper of your choice. Another complaint was that on pages that have front and back printing, so like an illustration on both sides, if you color it, it often causes gray areas to appear on the image that you've colored because the black is showing through, and it often ruins the image on the other side. So we decided to go with single-sided illustrations. And while the back of these pages do include some text, we grayed it out so it wouldn't be as noticeable when you color it. I also wanted this book to be a collaboration between me and you guys. So I have my contact info up here so I can check it out and leave you guys loads of praise and compliments for coloring with me. So if you order Curious Little Things, make sure you tag it Adult Coloring Book and Curious Little Colors so that I and other people can see your amazing coloring. So a lot of them mentioned having a test page, and I wasn't really sure what they meant by a test page. A test page is actually a blank page in the front or in the back where you can test out different art supplies to see if they work well in the book. But what we decided to do is not only do we actually have such a blank page in the back of the book, thanks Kindle, but we also decided to include the cover illustration twice so that you can practice different techniques and different materials before you commit to an illustration. We also added a bunch of illustrations. One of the things that was pointed out to me by someone who loves adult coloring books is that some of these illustrations were kind of simple and might not engage the relaxing part of the brain. So I added and created a bunch of new illustrations that should hopefully scratch that itch for you guys. So I'm going to share the process for some of that as part of this vlog as well. And you know how earlier I mentioned that we couldn't include chapter 2 of Lilliputian Living because it's grayscale? Well, we included chapter 5, which has never before been in print. It's daily life. I'm trying to find where it starts. It starts here. So it's a pretty good chunk of this book are all new to you illustrations to color, featuring loads of backgrounds, lots of families, lots of animals, lots of plants, lots of interiors and exteriors, just a lot of fun stuff to color. We also have a table of contents at the front that you can mark up in a variety of ways. You could write what material you used for each page. You could use it to find your favorites and color those first. It's kind of up to you. And we also have the page numbers on the opposing sides so that you can find everything. Now, I mentioned earlier that we included some new illustrations that are a little bit more busy, have a few more details in them. But something I really like about this coloring book is we have some very simple illustrations, which are great for marker artists or artists who like to really go in there and add their own details, or for sharing this book with a younger artist in your life. So you guys could actually work on this together. This could be a fun activity to share. So we have some simple illustrations that are pretty straightforward, and then we have more complicated illustrations to really challenge you. And then another bonus is that several of these illustrations have watercolor tutorials attached to them that I've already uploaded, so you can paint along with me using the download code if you want to. So we've got larger page sizes, we've got all new body text, we've got a brand new title page for you to color. We also have a I don't know what we call this. This book belongs to a dedication page, but this is a collaboration between me, Becca Hilburn, and you. And that is a brand new illustration as well. And then we have some of these busier illustrations in the back that we've created just for curious little things. In compiling the illustrations for Curious Little Things, I knew I wanted to create a brand new title page, and I wanted something that reflected the contents and got you guys excited about coloring along with me. So this is the illustration for the title page. It's a couple of kiddos coloring along with us. I'm sorry my hair keeps getting in the shot. I have to get like way on top of it to see what I'm doing. This was printed onto Stonehenge Aqua watercolor paper and inked with a Sakura Pigma FB brush pen. So this would be a waterproof and alcohol marker safe brush pen, and this is what I'm going to use for all of the additional illustrations added to Curious Little Things. So while researching covers for coloring books, I noticed two main trends. One was larger, more detailed illustrations that were sort of like half colored to imply that you could color along with them. The other was the use of black backgrounds, probably to denote that like, hey, this illustration is for adults. So I ended up coming up with two potential cover designs. This one here, which didn't get used, but I still love it, and I look forward to being able to paint it along with you guys. And it did get used in the coloring book itself, which is of a mother and her child with loads of tiny details and lots of flowers. And then the winning design, which I'll talk about in a moment. I put both of the sketches up on Twitter and allowed people to vote on which one they liked best. And unfortunately, this one was not the winner, but it still has a special place in my heart. And like I said, I look forward to coloring it with you guys. Here's our winning cover illustration. So this is of 3 Lilliputian children hiding amongst the wild roses. And while the concept itself is fairly simple, this thing is full of details, and it took forever to ink. I had to ink it in stages, and it took about 3 days for me to ink. So it really took a while, but I really love how it turned out. And I hope you guys will enjoy coloring along with me on this one. So this is also the test illustration. So you get this in Curious Little Things twice. So this could be a great opportunity to practice some skills, practice some techniques before you fully commit to any one medium on any illustration. Like I said, this one was very detailed. I had to do it in stages because otherwise it was gonna wreck my wrist and fingers. So if you're coloring along with me, I would recommend that you do the same and work on this one in stages. So something I noticed with coloring book covers that have like the black background cover is they're very fond of like round compositions with the text in the middle. So that's what I was going for with this illustration here, and I think it worked out really well. Curious Little Things was laid out in InDesign. We used InDesign for all of our books. The only time I don't use InDesign is if I'm laying out zines, and then I use Affinity Publisher. The two programs are fairly similar, but InDesign does have some features that Publisher just doesn't have. And it's great for exporting books in a format that KDP can actually read, i.e. a booklet style PDF. Unfortunately, this isn't a tutorial on how to use InDesign, but if there is enough interest over on Patreon, I might be able to finagle Joseph into recording a short, very quick how to lay out a mostly already done booklet. He spent a lot of time on Curious Little Things, laying things out, editing things, making sure everything was just right. And this book would not be possible without his work and his sacrifices. So a huge, huge, huge thank you to Joseph. So once we had a format we were pretty happy with, it didn't have to be 100% perfect. We went ahead and submitted it to KDP. I'm just kind of flipping through the files to show you guys generally what the book looked like at the first proof stage. We did make a lot of changes between proof 1 and the final book, but I wanted to give you guys kind of an overview of what we're dealing with. So we didn't really have any issues with uploading it to KDP. The cover that you guys see here is just kind of a color block or a color comp cover to give me an idea of how I was going to paint it. It also allowed us to go ahead and order a proof book that sort of looked like what the finished book was going to look like. And this is hugely helpful because having a proof in your hands allows you to troubleshoot, to find new problems, and to identify areas that you need to work on before you really commit to the final book. So if you are self-publishing with KDP, I really strongly encourage you to take advantage of the proofs. I think you can order 5 proofs at a time, and they do cost money, but I promise the money you're going to spend on your proofs is well worth it. It's going to save you so many problems down the line. Obviously, as an art nerd and an art supply geek, I had to draw loads of art supplies, hopefully to get you guys inspired and fired up. So I created a wreath out of some of my favorite art supplies to hopefully inspire you guys to color, draw, and paint along with me. And I pulled from what I had available on my desk, so all of these were referenced, but I did throw in some parody names here and there just to not like tip off the copyright police. This one is fairly straightforward since it's a collaboration between me and you, but I still really enjoyed getting to draw all of my favorite art supplies. I just love this sort of thing, these sort of collections of things. And I hope you guys will have loads of fun coloring this illustration in the book. I'm going to have a full tutorial of how I inked and painted the cover coming up to get you guys inspired and excited about curious little things, but I decided to do kind of like a greatest hits for the vlog just to show you guys some of the process that went into the cover itself. So with a lot of coloring books on Amazon, it is honestly digital colors meant to look like traditional media of some sort. And if you're familiar with traditional media, it's honestly pretty obvious what they're doing. The reason they're doing that though is because it's going to reproduce much cleaner and much brighter than most traditional media illustrations would do. It also takes far less time. This illustration took multiple days to paint and it had to be painted in stages, but we'll talk about that more in the standalone tutorial that's going to go with the coloring book. I chose to do it in watercolor because I love watercolor. It is my medium of choice, and because I really want to encourage you to take advantage of the download link included in the book so that you can paint along with me. So you could even treat this as kind of an art course because there are so many tutorials that go along with the coloring book that are freely available on YouTube that you could definitely learn how to paint the way I paint if you like how I paint just by printing them onto the paper of your choice or the paper that I recommend. It's up to you, and painting along with me. But I could have done alcohol marker, which surprisingly the finished books take alcohol marker really, really well. Or I could have done crayon or color pencil for the cover, but I went with where my heart is and what I love because I knew that it would make for a beautiful cover that would hopefully get you guys excited about painting and coloring along with me and joining our curious little things on their Lilliputian adventures. So one suggestion I got early on was to include more busy images. And I wanted to go with something that was busy but meditative, kind of like mandalas, but I don't do mandalas, so, you know, the same sort of vibes without it being the same sort of thing. So all 3 of the new illustrations focus around a theme, and it's very much like taking a nap or eyes closed. So this one is taking a nap among the clover and the clover blossoms. So it's very shoujo inspired, very femme, and I really loved drawing and inking this one. This is one of my favorite of the additional illustrations. Like our real cover, this one took forever to ink, and it was penciled on Arteza cotton rag watercolor paper, not because I really like it or recommend it, but because I have it and I wanted to go ahead and start using it up rather than it just sitting. So I tried to leave some areas less busy than others so it doesn't feel too anxious or too crowded. Feel free, if you're coloring along, to freehand whatever you would like in there. This is your opportunity to add your own artistic touches to the coloring book. And on that note, please feel free to color things however you wish, to change things, to add details. Like I said, this is a collaboration between us, so make it your own. Hey guys, I am really excited because the proofs for Curious Little Things, my Lilliputian Living coloring book, has come in. So I wanted to unbox them with you guys. Now these are proofs and they look pretty janky. They're just an approximation of, oh, actually. All right, so this is just kind of a flat fill. It's a color approximation. The cover is gonna look a lot better than this, I swear. But I already love the matte finish on the cover. I love how the dark background looks. And, ooh, okay, all right. So this is to give us an idea of how this will handle as a coloring book. It's also going to give us an idea of how much the inks might bleed through. As you guys can see, you can kind of see through the paper. So that's why we chose not to do back to front images on this or any text. And this also gives us a chance to, if we need to, resize any images. The finished books are going to have some additional images in them. They're also going to have a much better looking cover, but I am really excited to have these proofs. We ordered them through CreateSpace and it only took a couple days for them to come in, which is pretty impressive. For the vlog part of this, like I said, these are proofs. This gives us a chance to kind of make some corrections and some adjustments. But so far, I'm really happy with how it turned out. This is one of the images that are brand new for this book. I think that one's going to be a lot of fun to color. One of the things I don't love is the paper thickness. You can just see right through it. A lot of people have said that they like to watercolor in their coloring books, and unfortunately this paper isn't going to accommodate that. So something I want to add to the book is I want to add a section where there's a link where you can download, and hopefully it will be, when I say in perpetuity, I don't mean like 20 years from now, but I do mean like 5 years from now, kind of just depending on how popular the book is too. A download link where you can download high resolution images that you can print on your own paper, and I'd also like to include a short segment explaining how to do that, to just kind of accommodate my fellow watercolor friends who would like to be able to work on something a little bit better than CreateSpace's paper. But otherwise, just kind of flipping through it, I think it looks really good. And this is not necessarily a traditional coloring book in that there's a lot of areas of heavy spot blacks. One of our goals for Curious Little Things was to use the assets we'd already generated for Lilliputian Living with some curation, since so many people were already using Lilliputian Living as a coloring book. So I didn't want to redo a whole bunch of images. That's not really the point of this. There are a couple of images that I did redo, but that was more because actually I think this was one of the ones I should have a redo for, but like this one, for example, is a re-ink. And the reason for that is because I was going to paint it anyway, and I'd already printed it out and re-inked it. So I decided that I should include the nicer version. But you guys can see how thin the paper is, because you can see the spot blacks right through the paper. But that gives us a goal that if we were ever to do another coloring book and there was interest and funds, we would definitely try to go with a nicer paper than what CreateSpace has to offer. How much were the proofs?
Were they with or without shipping?
Both.
Without, it was like $2.36. With, it was about $5.20.
So as a comic artist and illustrator, everything we do has terrible margins. You don't make money making books, but at least coloring books have a better return on the time, because they're not quite as time intensive as doing comic pages, and the margins on printing these are way better than printing 7-inch Cara Volume 1, which is a comparable, oh, there's a crease there, which is a comparable sized book, both in terms of, it might be a little thinner than this, but it's full color. And to print volume 1, it's like a roundish $10 a book. So for a coloring book, the margins are just a lot better. Now, that doesn't mean I'm gonna stop making comics, but it does mean that if Curious Little Things does well, I would be very open to regularly doing coloring books and offering them both on, this is gonna be offered not on Kindle, but through Amazon. And it's also going to be available in the Netto shop and from me at shows. Here's the InDesign flip through for our second proof. This one is basically done, although we still have some areas that we wanted to work through. So I'm just kind of scrolling through the images to show you guys very quickly. Not too much has changed. We mostly just lightened up the text and the stuff that would show up on the subsequent pages. So here is our final proof cover. It looks a lot like the final copy of the book. Joseph spent a lot of time and a lot of effort designing and laying things out. And you can see with KDP, those dotted lines show you where the bleed's going to be. So with coloring books, one of the complaints is that the images are too close to the center of the spine and you can't actually get all the way in there. So we moved everything over and we really tried to pull everything to the edge so that these would be bleed images. They would go to the edges of the page. Unfortunately, in the final version, which we'll talk about more and which I do tend to harp on quite a bit, KDP had issues with that, which is weird because in both the proofs, they didn't have issues with that. And I do wish they allowed us to override some of these things. I had so much fun coming up with new bonus busy illustrations to include in Curious Little Things. I could have kept going on this theme forever because it ticks so many check marks in my brain of things that I love. So for this bonus illustration, I drew a tiny Lilliputian girl taking a nap among quilting supplies. I used to love to sew. I've kind of had to set it aside because my cat Bowie gets into everything. But I used to love sewing, and this allowed me to share that love with you guys and add a bunch of details and a bunch of tiny things for you guys to color. There's buttons, there's fabric patterns, there's fabric swatches, there's a pincushion, there's loads of lace, there's ribbons. Like I said, lots of fun details for you to color. And if you do end up coloring this illustration, I would really love to see what direction you take it in. I don't actually have a colored version of it yet. I'm sure I will share that as a tutorial when I do have one. So I am definitely open for suggestions and inspiration. And if you color it before I do, I would love to see it. So remember to tag me with Curious Little Colors or adult coloring book, or tag me at NattoSoup so I can see what you guys have done with this piece. Because like I said, I had a lot of fun drawing this one. I had a lot of fun inking this one. I had loads of fun adding in all the details and then going back in and adding in more details. I want to see what you guys do with it and what you guys make out of it. So this was also inked on the Arteza cotton rag watercolor paper, just trying to use that pad up. And it was inked with a Sakura Pigma FB brush pen. This is one of my favorite brush pens, and like I said, it is waterproof and alcohol marker proof. So I will be painting this illustration a little bit later on, and hopefully you guys will consider subscribing so that you can check it out. Where would a busy illustration of tiny people be without the inclusion of a candy illustration? So this is a Lilliputian girl making a candy angel out of hard candy. And boy, did I reference the heck out of this. I needed so much inspiration for the candy. I was looking up all sorts of different kinds of hard candies. So hopefully this will be a lot of fun for you guys to color with loads of little details and little illustrations for you to like really get in there and hone everything. This is another one that I'm both really excited to paint and also kind of nervous because there is a lot going on in this one. And since watercolor is my primary medium, it's not like I can go in and do a little bit at a time, but you definitely can. I feel like this would be a really good one for alcohol markers or for color pencils because you can get in there with those color pencils and really get those details down. And I went kind of crazy adding in more and more and more and more and more, just filling the space with fun details. But it looks like she's having so much fun, and hopefully you guys will have just as much fun coloring in this illustration as she is having making a candy angel, and as I had drawing and inking this one. Since this one is so detailed and so busy, it is another one that had to be done over a couple of days because I had to give my hands a chance to rest because I wanted to give you guys the best line art I could. And that requires taking breaks and resting so you can give it your best. So whether you're using this coloring book as your rest, or you're using it to practice different art skills, or you just want to color along with me, remember to take breaks and rest. Don't overstress your hand, and make sure that you stretch after so that you don't end up with early onset arthritis like I have. It was really important for me to field test Curious Little Things before we committed 100% to it. So when I got the first proof, I did a stream and we played around coloring a few of the images. So one of the things I wanted to test out first is alcohol markers. I love alcohol markers, and I went with a cheaper set. These are the Arctics markers, so they're very similar to Ohuhu, and I figured that a lot of people who like coloring books would probably have these markers. I also figured if cheap alcohol markers worked well on this paper, then more expensive alcohol markers would probably not be an issue. I was honestly really impressed and honestly quite surprised at how well these markers handled on this paper, because I was expecting them to bleed, to spider, to bleed through really badly. I thought there was going to be a lot of issues with blending and color control, but I actually had a lot of fun coloring with these markers on this paper, and I'm really happy to say that the Curious Little Things coloring book is alcohol marker approved. I would recommend that you use a sheet underneath of cardstock just to protect the page, just in case it bleeds through. I didn't notice significant bleed through, and certainly not on the secondary page, but I'd hate for you to ruin the page following. And I also found that we didn't really have any issues with bleeding, spidering, the ink reactivating, anything like that. As someone who loves alcohol markers, this is a big relief, and I'm going to continue to play around with different art materials in Curious Little Things to see what works. A friend of mine actually used Crayola markers on a page from Curious Little Things, Electric Abyss, if you guys would like to check out their work, and it turned out absolutely gorgeous. I was so stunned by how good Crayola markers handled in this coloring book. This paper also takes color pencil and crayon quite well, but as you guys will see in just a minute, it doesn't really take watercolor too well, but we'll talk about that more in a bit. The full stream is live on the channel if you'd like to watch it and get more information on how alcohol markers and watercolors handle in the Curious Little Things coloring book. So for the first illustration, I carefully tore it out of the coloring book. For the second, I wanted to try cutting it out. I would recommend, if you want to cut the illustration out, that you go ahead and you use an X-Acto blade for it rather than scissors, because it's really kind of hard to get the scissors into the spine. I also went ahead and taped it down to my work surface, and I'm using the Arteza cake style watercolors. And I chose these watercolors because I felt like these are very common watercolors. Artisoft makes these, De La Rowney makes these. These are really easy to find watercolors. So I figured a lot of people who do coloring for fun or coloring for relaxation might have access to watercolors like this, and they might also be using a water brush because it's very portable and compact. Now, this paper does not take watercolor well at all. It kind of does take it, period, but not well. I didn't enjoy painting on it, and I wasn't really that happy with the result. So what I would recommend you guys do is take advantage of the link in the book where you can download and print your own high-res scans of the illustrations in Curious Little Things. So you can print them at a size you like on a paper you enjoy working with. And I've got loads of Paint With Me watercolor tutorials, both just general things as well as illustrations from Lilliputian Living and Curious Little Things that you guys are very welcome. I hope you'll take advantage of it to paint along with me. Think of this as kind of a watercolor course if you want. You've got the art, you've got the instruction, and hopefully that'll make it easier to paint along with me. If you do end up painting along with me, I would love to hear about it. So don't forget to tag me at Nattosoup, Nattosoup. And if it's from Curious Little Things, make sure you use the hashtag Curious Little Colors so that I can check out your work. We have an alert set to that hashtag, so it'll let me know when people use it so I don't miss your art. Because like I said before, this is a collaboration between me and you. I provide the drawing, you provide the color, and I really want to see what you guys come up with and how you make this coloring book your own. So the paper didn't rip, it didn't tear, it didn't pill. I just didn't really like how water and watercolor sat on the paper and how it dried. You can use water-based markers. As I mentioned earlier, a friend of mine did an illustration using Crayolas and it looked so good. I'm so impressed with it. So apparently this takes Crayola decently well, and I would bet it would take water-based brush markers like the Kuretake Clean Color Real Brush markers, those kind of markers, even better. I bet those would be far less likely to tear up the paper. As I mentioned earlier, I do plan on testing out other art materials in the book to see how they work and so that we have some examples for people to look at and feel inspired by. But if you are brave and bold, if you're going to try this out, if you use gel pens, if you're using pastel, if you're using some unusual media, I would love to see how it turns out and I would love to hear your thoughts. So please remember to tag me so I can check it out. So after 2 proofs and a few final tweaks, we were ready to bite the bullet and order our books. And this is where KDP really started to throw some issues for us. So this is the My Books page. You guys can see all of the other books that are available through either Kindle or KDP or available on Amazon. 7-inch Kara Volume 2 is a little bit of a tricky one. It is technically available on Amazon, but you have to jump through all these weird hoops to be able to order a copy through Amazon. So if you live in the US, it would really be my preference if you ordered it through the Natto shop. And that way I can dedicate it to you and throw in some extra goodies as well. So as always, make sure you check the description below because I will have all of the things linked for you guys. However, Volume 1, Lilliputian Living, and Curious Little Things are all fulfilled by KDP. Thus, they ship directly from Amazon. I don't get to really handle those books. And I also have a hardcover version of Volume 1 available. So if you're a librarian or a teacher, or your kids are particularly rough, or you would just like a giftable copy of Volume 1, hardcover is available on Amazon, and it's also available in the Natto shop. So as I kind of hinted at earlier, we had some issues when it came to ordering the final books and getting approval. So KDP really does not like these all the way to the edges bleed illustrations, which is something that a lot of coloring books have and a lot of people who buy coloring books want to see. KDP supposedly has a person, a real human, check random pages through your book for issues. So one of the problems that kept happening is we kept getting these bleed notices. And the thing is, you can't override it. You can't tell KDP, hey, I know, I'm cool with it. I'm good with it. I've ordered 2 proofs. I'm fine. Just send it as is. We've tried leaving messages in the message memo box. No one checks it. We have tried tweeting at Kindle and KDP to talk to them about this. No one ever responded to me. It's really frustrating because it creates some inconsistency in the book because they don't check all the pages. And so some of the pages had to get dragged in and then some were left as is. It was done intentionally, and it's not something that I would have wanted, and I feel like it made us look kind of sloppy. Another thing is that this dragged the process of ordering our books out by 3 weeks, and I was actually dealing with a death in the family during that time. We would not have had the books for CXC, Cartoon Crossroads Columbus, if Joseph hadn't stayed on it and kept fixing things and kept re-uploading things and just pushing through. So I really appreciate his dedication. But finally, it went through. We made the right changes. We guessed the right things, and we were able to order copies through Amazon. So we needed it in a hurry at this point. We needed it in about a week and a half. So we decided to order 2 sets. We ordered a set of 15 that we paid to have it express shipped for us, and we basically paid twice as much in terms of shipping. And then we ordered just 25 regular copies that we paid the normal amount of shipping for. And I believe off the top of my head, the price for us to purchase these books is around $3 per book. So you would think the margins would be really good because I'm selling them for $10 each. But do keep in mind, I drew all those illustrations. I added new illustrations, and we put a lot of time and effort and work into putting this book out. So we are basically breaking even. I also did a lot of research while I was working on the coloring book, and I wanted to price us competitively. So the book is at $10, but it's about twice as thick as the other adult coloring books that are available on the market. And the reason for that is I just had a bunch of cool illustrations that would have worked well in the book. I guess I could have done a volume 2, but I am happy with just having one Curious Little Things, and then eventually, maybe if there's interest, releasing another Curious Little Things, or even potentially switching to a higher grade paper. It really depends on how well the book sells. So you guys can see it cost us $2.99 per book, plus you have to factor in shipping. So what I would recommend is if you're ordering coloring books and you know it's going to work for you, order it basically in sets of 25. We'll talk about why that is in a little bit. Hey guys, so something really exciting came in the mail. Actually, 2 somethings, but we're only going to open one of these somethings today. So why don't you guys come closer so I can show you what's inside. So, Curious Little Things, the final not proof for sale copy has finally arrived. A little bit dusty, actually. I'm not exactly happy about that, Amazon, but I will now have copies of Curious Little Things in the Natto shop, and I will have them at my upcoming October conventions. So make sure you check those out and come say hi. I would love to talk to you guys, get to know you guys, and maybe you can go home with a copy of Curious Little Things. Okay, so here is Curious Little Things. It's over 80 black and white, tiny core, cottage core, grandma core, but not fairy core, illustrations for you to color. We have some more simple illustrations. We also have some, if I get to them, some more complex illustrations. There are illustrations with loads of character, loads of background, and loads of personality. So I am so excited to finally have it to show you guys. This has been a labor of love and a lot of work, and I would love to collaborate with you guys. So Curious Little Things is now in the shop. So this is for the coloring book vlog. So Joseph ordered one set of how many? 15 express. So he paid extra money to get it to us in time. And then one order of 25, which we just paid for regular shipping. The 25, the regular shipping ones arrived yesterday, Tuesday. And the 15 that we paid extra for arrived today, Wednesday. Both arrived in time for us to be able to check over them and pack them up for CXC, which is in Ohio, which we're flying for. So it was really important to get these in time. But I would say there's really no reason to pay for expedited shipping with KDP because regular shipping is going to get to you before express shipping does anyway. So mostly I'm pretty happy with them. They do look like there's some travel damage. I thought there was dust on the book, but it's it's pretty on there. I may try wiping it off. It also looks like there's printer damage. I don't really understand what it is about KDP, but like the proofs will come to you beautiful, and then when you actually sink money into the books, they could be all over the place. This happened with volume 1 as well. So that always kind of takes some of the shine off of a book launch, because you have a good number of books that you can't necessarily, yeah, the spine didn't print correctly, even though it printed correctly on the proofs. You have a good number of books that you can't actually sell because they sold you defected books instead of anybody doing any kind of quality control. So I'm pointing that out to you guys. Here's another one. I'm pointing that out to you guys in case you are self-publishing and you're watching this vlog because you're curious about, there's actually a number of like hinky prints. Now, I'm going to set those aside, send those to friends, send those to family as a gift. So, you know, it isn't fine, but I can deal with it. But I do think that when you're buying something from KDP to sell, and they know why you're buying these books, they should be, look how scratched up and dinged up and gnarly that looks. That's embarrassing, Kindle. For real, like, look at that. That is embarrassing. Honestly, I think maybe 1 or 2 books is an acceptable number out of 25 or 15, really more 25 than 15, to have just an unsellable, out of the box condition. Look how nasty that looks. They really did a garbage job with that. But as I'm kind of going through the box, there's a number of them that I'm kind of not happy with, which is so disappointing. So this is actually my worst, in terms of like what's going on with the covers, this is my worst. This one's all right. I'm going to try cleaning some of these up. This is my worst experience with KDP ever. So it's not, maybe don't do black covers. I don't know, but that's really popular with coloring books, and coloring books are really popular on KDP. Why are so many of these damaged? That's what I can't fathom. As I go through the box, I'm like, why are these all scuffed? Was it a delivery problem? Was it a packaging problem? I don't know, but it's a problem that now I get to deal with. Okay, so that was soup to nuts, start to finish, my experience with putting together and printing my first coloring book using KDP. I hope you guys will check out Curious Little Things. As you guys saw, I've worked very hard of it, and I'm still very proud of the art on the inside. So hopefully you'll check it out. You can find it on Amazon and you can find it in the Natter Shop. I'll have links to both in the description below. So if you have made it this far, thank you so much. I hope this has been helpful, useful, and informative for you guys. I'm not quite done yet. So I wanted to talk a bit about the pros and cons of working with KDP and my experiences with Curious Little Things. So as you guys saw, we ordered an express ship box and then a regular ship box, and the regular ship box arrived a day before the express ship box. The regular ship box had some printing flaws to it that I think KDP should have caught before they sent it out. However, as we went through the other box, the box that had 25 copies in it, everything was in good condition. It wasn't all scratched up. So I do feel better about that, but I do want to caution you as a customer who may be buying in bulk that that can and does happen with the matte cover books. I have never ordered any of the glossy or regular cover books, so I don't know if that's a problem with those books as well, but I can tell you it is definitely a problem with the matte cover books because they put a plastic coating on it, which does make it hold up a little bit better in general wear and tear, but for some reason it gets really scuffed in that type of shipping. However, if you are ordering individual copies from Amazon, they're going to put it in a bubble wrap mailer and it should arrive fine. And if you're ordering copies from me, I'm going to put it in a book fold and make sure that it's wrapped in such a way that it shouldn't arrive damaged to you. So the damages are a me problem, not a the problem if you are just a customer. But if you are someone like me who's a small business and you're manufacturing and selling these books, it is something to keep in mind. The price point is also just not as good as ordering in bulk from a company like Versa, which we use for volume 2 of 7-inch Cara. But when you're ordering from a company like that, you are ordering in massive bulk. I'm talking 500 books. Whereas KDP allows you to order 1 book to 100 books, but you don't see the same sort of nice price breakdowns that you would from a bulk printing company. So you're going to pay a lot more per individual copy, but you do have you can have a lower threshold. So if you want to try out a book, if you don't want a closet full of 7-inch Cara volume 2 that you're selling, then this could be an option for you. It makes self-publishing a bit more accessible. I know there are some other options for self-publishing out there, so if you're aware of them, please do let me know. So I brought Curious Things, I announced Curious Little Things while I was at Cartoons Crossroads Columbus in Columbus, Ohio last weekend. In fact, if you're curious about that show, I have 2 recaps. I have a short recap for the public, and then I have a full extended recap with lots of behind the scenes over on my Patreon, so that could be a good reason to join me. And I sold all but 1 copy of my book. I think there is a market for my Curious Little Things, and we've been working on finding our pattern for it. I think it's a cottagecore coloring book about Lilliputians living their best life. The paper, as you guys who watched the stream and also saw in this vlog, this is the wrong copy. So this is the first proof with its very much placeholder block in. This was a color comp, and then we just slapped it on the cover so that we had something that we could do a proof with. This is our second proof, and it's much closer to the final. And then for the third proof, so some of these, and I'm sorry it's so windy, some of these have like full bleed to the edges. No problem, looks great, I love it. And then Kindle had a problem. I have to find, because it's like real sporadic. Okay, so like this one, we couldn't make it a full bleed because KDP was like, there are errors with this. We never got to talk to a human. They never read the messages that we left, and they never answered my tweets. So, oh, this is another one that should be full bleed and isn't. So that is something I don't like because it creates an inconsistency in the book. It makes things look sloppy. It makes it look like we don't know what we're doing, and we actually did a lot of research. And it's something that would have been incredibly easily remedied if KDP read their messages, responded to their tweets, or just, I don't know, use their eyeballs, because some of the images were a problem and some weren't, and there wasn't a rhyme or reason, and they didn't give a good explanation. And we wasted about a week going back and forth with Kindle, never getting to talk to someone about the bleeds. And we really wanted to have this book for CXC, and we got it just in the squeak of time. But if we had been allowed to talk, if we could have just paid to talk to a person about it and had them send it through, we'd have gotten it a week sooner, and it would have been so much less stress. So I point that out because if you're doing coloring books, that is a big deal. A lot of people who like coloring books want that edge-to-edge bleed. They want that attention to detail. And it's frustrating for me as the person who made this and actually designed those spreads specifically for this book to be kind of more busy patterns to, you know, satisfy that part of the brain. And they're meant to be edge-to-edge bleeds, and KDP is just like, nope, you can't. So that's frustrating for me, and I think a big deal for coloring book people. We are selling the book for $12 online, $10 if you buy it from me in person, and it has 84 single-sided illustrations. It might have more than 84. It has at least 84 single-sided illustrations. And then we also have, because I consider this book to be a collaboration between myself and the people who color it, and I really want to see what they do. I'm so excited to collaborate with y'all. So you can tag me at Natto Soup so I can see it. And you can also use the hashtags adult coloring book and Curious Little Colors. And we already have like an alert set to Curious Little Colors so I can see when people add to it. But if you do color these pages and you use these hashtags, not only do I get to look at your art and be like, oh, it's amazing, but also you're helping me get the word spread about this book, which as a small business, that is a big deal and a huge help, and I really appreciate it. So we also had some options in terms of how we sell it. We could have opted not to allow it to be sold on Amazon. We could have just sold it on the shop and made it very exclusive. But I have a lot of friends who live in other countries, and one of the complaints with things sold in the Natto shop, like Volume 2, is that it's not. And to be fair, Volume 2 is available on Amazon, but if you don't let them sell it for you, i.e. you don't ship them books and they warehouse it and you pay a big fee towards that, if you fulfill it yourself, they will actually hide the buy it now, and you have to click through to buy like other selling options. You have to click like 6 times to find it. I don't love that. So for Curious Little Things, it is being sold also by Amazon, so it should be very easy for you to find it and for you to buy a copy if you want to buy a copy. I see a pennies amount for those sales, which is fine. It is what it is. But if you live in the US and you would like to buy a copy and you'd like some free goodies sent in, then the best way to do that would be through the Natto shop. I see a larger margin for the sales, and it allows me to customize the order and personalize it and make it feel special, because this is from me to you. We're working together on this, and I do want it to feel special. So I hope this vlog on my experiences in printing and selling my first coloring book, I hope they were helpful, useful, and informative for you guys. I hope they were inspiring if this is something that you would be interested in pursuing in the future. And if you're into coloring books, or you're into my art, or you just want to collaborate in this sort of way, you can find links down in the description below to where you can get your own copies of my work, from Curious Little Things, the newest coloring book, all the way to Volume 1, my first perfect bound self-published comic. You can find those in the Natto shop at nattosoup.com/shop. If you would like to check out what I'm working on this year for Lilliputian Living, I am sharing them on pretty much all of my socials, which you can check out here. I hope you guys enjoyed this vlog. It is one of the longer ones, but there was a lot of back and forth, and I wanted to show that properly, and I also wanted to share some of the new work that I put into this. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're looking for some of the Curious Little Things watercolor tutorials, I have a playlist of that for you guys. I hope you guys will check it out, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you guys again soon with another review, vlog, or tutorial. Bye guys!